Welcome back, lovely audience. In today's episode, I interview the lead developer of Blur Network, alias Biz. Kind of a cool coincidence there. Mind Your Biz interviews Biz. We talk all about Blur Network, talk about some of the things that they're doing differently. They're not just a fork of Monero, they've actually made significant changes to the CryptoNote spec and the way they implement it, and they've also implemented something, or are on their way to implementing something that is unique among CryptoNotes, and that is DPoW. That's right. We talk about that and much more in this interview. So sit back, relax, grab yourself, I don't know, let's say some grape juice plus milk. It never works out well. Don't really do it. Grab something else. But grab a relaxing beverage and enjoy this interview. Every project was a day one launch at one point. And you talk to them and it's like, what does price action mean? We want hash rate. Like that's what we need today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always try to vote my hash rate. I don't mind too much, to be honest with you anymore. Yeah, I kind of started off doing the mining thing, and then found that I was, spending time on tech I didn't understand. So, kind of went from almost a writer perspective. I was reviewing coins for a while, and then just started digging into the code and kind of manipulating things, seeing how things broke. And, you can learn a lot from the way things break, right? Disassembly is the best way to learn how to invent things, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd hate to see your garage, man. 15 project cars, well, I'm an expert now.
Hey, I put things back together. That's the other important part.
with no leftover pieces?
Yeah, well, most of the time. Sometimes things break off. You know how it is.
Yeah, no, that I do. I think there's a reason that so much of crypto is male dominated. That need to tinker,
Oh, absolutely.
But anyway, maybe we should actually get the show started. This has been good intro banter, but let me ask you for the record, who am I speaking with? What is the pseudonym that you go by publicly?
So I go by Biz. I'm the lead developer of the Blur Network. I used to write under the name Biz Money, Who Biz. I also go by within the developer world. So there's a couple, but they all have Biz in them. So
nice. So so when you saw my channel, you were like, sweet, mine your .biz. This guy's exactly. I haven't even talked to this guy. He's already jocking. Yeah. That's awesome. So a little bit about you getting into development. You mentioned before, as we were just kind of chatting a bit informally, that you've done some coin reviews. You've read. It sounds like a bit of documentation as well. You've kind of jumped into the deep end of, or done deep dives on code. How did that start?
So basically, what I started doing was, just kind of writing opinion pieces within crypto. I've had my eyes on the markets and stuff like that since probably, 2013, but I didn't really get involved until Monero piqued my interest, to be honest with you. So kind of started writing about all that stuff, did a review of Stellite, big 2-part review when they were still called Stellite. I think they're called Scala now or something. I'm not really sure, but did a big review on them, talked to Hazam, their developer, kind of found myself looking at tech and saying, hey, I don't understand this as fully as I should be, particularly if I'm, voting with my hash rate, spending money on coins, whatever way you want to get involved, right? So that happened to occur around the same time that Nerva launched. We forked our code base off of Nerva just because I was able to see, how they were launching the network. So I kind of forked off of that, emulated for a while, and then started going our completely own route with development. Absolutely fell in love with the development side of things. And I've pretty much been going deep on that for, 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years.
Nice. Okay. Wow, dude. Well, time flies when you're in crypto, but it's this paradoxical thing, right? Where on the one hand, your subjective experience of time is completely warped by being involved in crypto. The news cycle is completely accelerated. But on the flip side, we all live and die by a block time, right? Our time is measured in blocks, not in minutes.
No, I mean, I honestly think that's the coolest part about this tech is you've really got these gigantic decentralized timestamp servers. That's really what they are, right? So, I mean, I think there was recently, maybe 2 years ago or something, they actually used a Bitcoin block as evidence something happened in a court case, which is a huge landmark.
Dude, you got to send me a link because that's nuts.
I can pull it up real quick here.
Yeah, please don't send it through this chat because I'm screen recording within Jitsi, but maybe in Discord. Yeah.
Okay.
Hit me on the Discord chat, but that's killer. So legal precedent with blockchain timestamps.
Absolutely.
Brutal.
Yeah. Bitcoin specifically, but still huge first step.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So I know, like, so speaking of legal precedent, there's a mobile app. I don't know if you ever used this before, but it's called the Torque app for Android.
Have not.
So, I mean, we just talked about tinkering, and I'll to crank the dial up to 11 on the tinkering combo. There is an app called Torque, and it's made by this developer out in the UK. I think he was trying to scratch his own itch, where he said, like, there are these onboard diagnostic port readers that you can get from any auto parts shop, right? This little cable, and it's got a little, like, old school serial port looking adapter, and you can plug it in, read the codes from your car's ECU, and try to figure out what's going on with my car. And he said, well, but you can get the same type of device that plugs in via USB to a laptop, but even that seems kind of cumbersome in a world full of smartphones. Like, why don't we just make a Bluetooth dongle for that, and then I'll make an app? And
very cool.
Makes a killer app, and it reads everything from the car's ECU. You can create your own custom heads-up display by get this, linking this Bluetooth dongle to a phone or tablet, and then creating your own custom instrument cluster, turning it onto your dash and reflecting it off of your own windshield. It'll display it backwards. So you get a heads-up display that floats over your hood.
That is wild.
Like, it does all this crazy stuff. The app costs $5, and then it logs all of these codes from your car's ECU and can sync it to your GPS. All that is to say, to bring it full circle, that's legally admissible in court. Like, it's new tech that hasn't existed more than 6-8 years as far as, like, popular use, but now you could bring a timestamp from the GPS in your phone as logged by that app. And if a cop gives you a ticket, you can say, oh, that's cool. I'll see you in court. I've got my GPS right here logged against my own car's speedometer and tach. So you go ahead and bring whatever you want to bring to court. I've got a log of what my car actually did.
That's very cool. Very cool.
So
I mean, I think that's one of the things we run into kind of constantly, particularly within crypto, is regulatory policy catching up slowly to technology, which is moving so much faster, right? I mean, you've got, like, tortoise and the hare situation going on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, legal will always catch up, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how things shake down. I mean, I know that privacy coins were kind of considered, privacy's only for criminals, that whole thing, right? That was going on for a while. I think that's finally on its way out, which is great to see, because I think everybody has a right to privacy, right? I mean, not a constitutional one, but they've said, there is an implied right to privacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's just it. The implied right to privacy, I think that there definitely is some constitutional backup when you talk about, at least in the United States. I'm taking for granted, Biz, that you're a North American, you're a United States citizen.
Correct. Yes.
Cool. All right. So you didn't. You doxed yourself. Oh no, he's one of 300 million people. So it's just funny because we got a lot of developers who are from Canada, the UK, right? A disproportionate number from Australia, which is like.
Yeah, no, I find that strange too. Honestly, there's not that many people within the U.S. actually kind of focused on crypto so far. I mean, there's quite a few of them, but not anywhere near the global scale that it is other places, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And and legally, I think it's because it's weird. There's not a whole lot of upside to being a very public figurehead for a cryptocurrency project in North America or in the United States.
Right. Exactly.
It's just all liability. So
100%. Yeah.
So I maybe that's why. Yeah. This pseudonyms, and it's like, okay, well, where are you based? South Africa. Yeah. But, yeah. But if I were to head up a cryptocurrency project today, I would not stand as the face of it. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, you run into this spot, right, where it's hard to have an organization without a leader, right? Somebody without a face running the organization is kind of difficult, right? But I mean, so it's kind of a fine balance between, I have no problem hopping on audio calls with people. I've done video calls with a couple of people. There are people in crypto who know who I am, but so the liability side of things isn't so much my motivation as much as the philosophical side of things, right? I believe that everybody has a right to privacy. And I think it also is empowering when you have somebody that you don't know who it is doing really cool things with code. It might empower people to do the same themselves, right? I mean, the fact that, a developer could be anybody, I think is empowering to some people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. There is, and there's definitely the ethos of code is law. There are some circles that
that talk about it a little more in more concrete terms than others, especially the Ethereum, right? The
Right.
ETH heads, right? Or ETH heads, people call them. So, but the ETH heads, right? For them, they're writing smart contracts like day in, day out, and they know full well, like you live and die by the terms of this contract. So yeah, code is law here, and
Right.
we can make that, can create that strong parallel. But everywhere else, it's like, no, code is code and law is law, and programmers, you have to audit their code to see what they're writing into it, because if you participate, it's voluntary participation in a system of rules, but it's not law per se. But
absolutely. And I mean, the insider threat's a really big thing in crypto too, right? When you have people contributing code that, you don't know who they are, you don't know what their prior works are, you really have to be careful about what gets included. Just something being open source doesn't actually make it secure. You have to audit the code, and not only that, know the way it works, be on the lookout for weird bugs, that kind of stuff. So, I think that the defensive programming side of crypto is very different from the programming in other fields, right? I mean, you don't have people that are constantly, you don't have to worry about, dependency injection attacks, that kind of stuff, merging stuff in from upstream that just breaks everything, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. I think that I have a little bit of an advantage, being that this is, kind of where I started programming. I've worked with statistical R and C++ in college a little bit, but I'm largely self-taught. And I think that it's an advantage having to always deal with that atmosphere, as opposed to people that come in, trusting other people's code. I've never really known that world, so to speak. So
yeah, right. Yeah. These streets, these crypto streets, make you hard.
Yeah, I like to say I have the benefit of no preconceptions.
That's cool. That's cool. So I can appreciate everything that you're talking about so far. Let's dive into the project just a little bit about Blur Network. And for anybody who's just listening in, that's blur.cash is where you can read all the vitals. But let's talk about just a couple of basics for the project. Get this crap out of the way, because this is just numbers, right? People can look this up. It's on the site as well. But to help answer any questions they have, let's talk about just a couple of basic vitals. The stuff people would need to know just to understand how the network moves. For example, right. Supply. Is this going to have a capped emission?
So no, we have a Monero emission model essentially, where our max supply as far as code is concerned is half of that of Monero, so 9.2233 million, right? 9,223,300 is the total supply of Blur coins. Now, tail emission will go beyond that, right? So technically, there's an infinite supply, but basically what we have planned is to have, once the supply hits, or emission rather, hits 2.0 Blur per block, we're going to do something experimental. Instead of going all the way to tail emission, we're just going to keep it constant at 2.0 Blur per block from there on out, kind of similar to what Grin's doing in terms of emission, right?
Got it. I don't think there's any wrong answer there, right? Like, obviously, you guys are taking the approach that you're taking. There are so many different coins that take a different approach, and they draw heavy criticism because everybody wants to see something that's like completely deflationary by nature. And it's kind of like, is that always the right choice?
I mean, I think deflationary is honestly a death sentence for any actual currency. Whether that holds true for commodities remains to be seen, right? That's what's so interesting about Bitcoin to me. I disagree that it's a good decision keeping, a static amount of supply at one point. We'll see what happens when it transitions to the theme market, but that was a major selling point in terms of forking Monero's code, was the fact that, they didn't go with a deflationary model.
Got it. Cool. All right. So that's good to know. Transactions per second, this might not be the thing that matters most to you guys, but what's your throughput?
So CryptoNode is notoriously slow as far as transaction processing goes. From what I've read, it takes about 5 seconds to process a full transaction, depending on the size. What's good about our network is we don't have a whole lot of transactions going on currently. So it only takes about 2 hours to sync 1 million blocks on our blockchain. We're coming up on the 1,000th block next 2 months anyway. And it takes 2 hours. Our whole blockchain on disk is less than 1 gigabyte. And I think our sync speed kind of, to put it lightly, blows Monero's out of the water, just based on the amount of usage we've had of the network so far.
Got it. Well, I can imagine also that right now you guys are the beneficiaries of a lot of optimization that's gone on with Monero over the last couple of years. So
sure. I mean, they did a recent pruning thing with syncing. I disagree with that. I don't think it's a responsible way to go about it, because what they did was basically each peer takes 1/8 of a slice of the blockchain. So say you have, somebody's able to forge blockchain history for 1/8. They've then shared that slice with 7 more people. So you're missing a lot of redundancy checks that should be happening, in my opinion. Whether or not that translates to a problem in practice remains to be seen, right?
Got it. So you prefer, as far as like fast settlement, maybe taking some other approach.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that, one of the things within LMDB, that's the database that our code and Monero's both run on. We actually change the way that sync occurs so that it happens kind of concurrently. That way there's at least, basically two strands of nodes you're syncing from. If one doesn't have a block, rather than it hanging and waiting for the other one, it just immediately pulls in the other one from the second node in parallel, right? So say you have 6 nodes you're syncing from, they actually all send their ledgers all at once. And then any blanks that are there, it can fill in from the other ones.
Okay. Got it. Awesome. So there's been a little bit of innovation here. Are there any other projects that share this same approach?
No. I think we're the first one to do it. I mean, we make a habit of kind of tinkering around. I think the last 14 months of our code has been completely original. We have not ported Monero code in almost 1 year plus 2 months, right? So a lot of the work we've been doing, I mean, that centers primarily around delayed proof of work. We're porting into Komodo's 51% attack mechanism security by notarizing to Bitcoin. So what we'll do is we'll notarize our chain to Komodo's, and then they'll notarize to Bitcoin. That's really where the majority of our work has been focused upon for the last year, since April last year.
Got it. That's very cool. So I spoke with the Komodo team not too long ago, and I understand that they're offering this as a service within the blockchain communities to allow for notarization to their blockchain. Or they're offering a lot as far as platform level crypto or blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Goes. But are you one of the earlier cases of them showing this new product?
So delayed proof of work had been out for a while. As I understand it, took JL77 James Lee about 6 years to write the whole thing. We had to write a lot of workarounds to make it work with Monero's code, because everything they had done prior was based on SecP 256K1, the actual curves behind Bitcoin. So they kind of approached me. It was James and Duke from Hush that approached me. So lead developer of Komodo, lead developer of Hush approached me and said, hey, we're interested in being able to notarize, coins that are on your curves as well. They said, anything with a 256-bit hash can actually be notarized. It doesn't matter what curves you're on, that kind of thing. So it's just a matter of actually getting it done. And I think they offered 3 years of free notarizations in exchange for me doing the work. Wow. So, I mean, it's been a year worth of work on my part in exchange for, basically 3 years of support on their end. And I've got some great guys from their team helping out now. Their CTO, Kadan Stadelman's helping out, CA333. I've got a couple other developers, Colo, All Right, and Tony L helped me out as well. And Duke's still on board as well, kind of talking me through things. So,
man, that is really, really cool. This is all great to hear also. So as you know, this is behind the scenes, especially within the mining communities and within the sort of like hype train communities surrounding all those cryptos. You hear all kinds of nasty stuff people say. And to get this out of the way and out in the open right now, frankly, I've heard some nasty stuff about Blur from people who just whatever. I don't know if it's sour grapes or if they understand the roadmap or they understand the amount of work that's gone in so far. But sure, I've heard some people say some terrible things.
We've kind of gotten a lot of enemies. I like to think it's because we're fixing things that people don't want fixed. That kind of thing. I'm also pretty opinionated. So, when we catch, almost immediately as soon as we launched, we were catching shade from a few communities. I've been rather outspoken in terms of, what I'll tolerate and what I won't in terms of people casting shade, right? So, it's we try to keep the shots fired to a minimum kind of thing between communities, because I think the tribalism stuff does plague crypto, and I think it's horrible. But, if you show me a group that's innovating and willing to work with us, I can show you a group we're willing to work with.
Got it. Very cool. I mean, and I think the evidence is right there with your collaboration and your work with the Komodo team. Like, I've got to be honest. Like, if I'm gonna mention any other projects within our interview, I'm glad you did first, because I've been fanboying to death over Komodo lately. I'm trying not to be too public about it because I want to seem impartial, right? Like, I want to try to maintain some impartiality. But that's super cool that you guys are doing delayed proof of work. And it's super cool that they're working with you and offering that long-term support or the initial support free. To me, it's very cool because this is going to be the first cross-chain security mechanism between the Monero, Zcash, and Bitcoin worlds. Dude. This will be the first one that actually is communicating across chain between those three. So, I mean, we're making history as far as blockchain goes. Yeah. Well, and privacy by default, it's like you got both you guys with CryptoNote, and then you've got the the pirate chain guys that are
Right.
just
Yeah,
doing
absolutely.
Z only, but it's a different methodology, different approach. I know, but I'm a big fan of CryptoNote. Like,
I'm a big fan of CryptoNote. I'm also a big fan of Pirate. I think that Pirate actually has the largest anonymity set of any coin out there currently. Is my personal opinion.
well, it's fully Z to Z, but based on sapling, so it should theoretically on paper.
Yeah, of course.
There are problems, right? With the pure currency play, and we all have to contend with that. Adoption is like we're all standing on the event horizon. Will the general public say like we're tired of the money printer machine and go with crypto?
Right.
Or won't they?
No, I mean, I think it'll happen eventually, but these things are, they're socio-technological transitions, right? So, I mean, you've got to have society primed at the same point that the technology is, and almost both of them accelerating at the same speed for them to uptake each other. Otherwise, if society isn't ready and the technology is far ahead, you have the situation we're in now, right? So I think that this kind of stuff with the money printer meme and all that stuff that's going on in the world right now, right? I think it's a catalyst to actually move down that alley and get people understanding that there shouldn't just be some guy with a money printer that's able to deflate your holdings that are sitting in the bank, right?
Yeah.
They're printing money, your money's worth less every time they do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole yet. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think you're totally right. There's an inflection point, and I'm hoping that we actually see that. Hopefully it's not just pain and suffering and loss and whatever, like high increased suicide rates and stuff. Like there's a lot of bad stuff that's coming out of the current state of economies and all the knock-on effects of the COVID-19 closures. So hopefully there's a silver lining.
I mean, I always feel as though you can bet safely on the U.S. It must suck really bad to root against the United States. Is how I feel. But so I've got confidence in Americans in particular to figure out a solution that works.
Yeah, cool. We'll talk about that in a little bit also. Let's get through some of the basic vitals of Blur as a project. As far as you mentioned the emission curve, you mentioned transaction per second. It's not really the most important thing at the moment because adoption is the first hurdle. But let's talk about the unique, the problem and the pain that you saw initially. And I hope you forgive me. You probably heard me talk about this before on the channel. I like evaluating cryptocurrency projects and teams the same way that people, I think, should evaluate any kind of open source or tech startup project, where you can look at it and see like, all right, well, whose itch are you really trying to scratch? And does anybody else suffer from that same condition?
Sure.
So to begin with.
So I think the biggest way that we're addressing that is, with the delayed proof of work, we're going to have, privacy that's inherited from Monero, and then, the security of Bitcoin that we're taking by proxy with that. So I think the biggest issue with a lot of these small coins is, the susceptibility to 51% attacks, the lack of immutability, when that's one of the core tenets of blockchain. So I think our to put it as you put it, the biggest itch we're scratching is the privacy of Monero with the security of Bitcoin.
Got it. Okay. That's great. Thanks for putting that so succinctly. Let's talk about the unique tech advantage and the benefit of going with Blur Network today over any other option within whether it's CryptoNote or it is something forked from Zcash, that's a ZK Snark or possibly in the future ZK Stark based privacy. What makes Blur Network unique?
So, I mean, again, I think it's the interoperability route that we're going. We have kind of a habit of innovating. We have an algorithm that I wrote for, or a tweak, I guess, on Kryptonite that I wrote for our specific algorithm, Kryptonite Dynamic. That in particular, we've managed to get higher hash rates out of AMD CPUs than a 2080 Super, which, we're trying to keep things focused on a CPU focused, ecosystem currently, right? So to actually have an algorithm we wrote perform that well versus a GPU is, I think, a little bit of the holy grail of crypto, right? In terms of actual ASIC resistance, right? I mean, I think that that's a fallacy in itself, but what we're trying to lead that into, we had somebody that did come out with a GPU miner, tested that against our actual CPU miner, and it performs, as good or worse, actually, than the best CPUs, right? Which is kind of unheard of. But what we'd like to do eventually is, we're building out a multi-chain ecosystem, kind of. So what we're trying to do is have different algorithms on independent chains within the same ecosystem, have, basically swap in points for the GPU and the ASIC chain and try to incentivize those away into factions so that GPUs are only competing against GPUs, ASICs are only against ASICs, and CPUs against CPUs. And we plan on doing that by actually weighting rewards relative to the, hash rate compared to a CPU, right? So say GPU gets, I don't know, five thirds the power that a standard CPU would. What we want to do is then tailor rewards to the inverse of that. So each coin on the GPU chain would be worth 3/5 of a CPU coin. So you get slightly more benefit by mining with your GPU on that chain as opposed to the CPU chains. People can still adapt hardware and software. We're not going to try to resist that because I think that's a game of cat and mouse that's perpetual and helps nobody. So what we're trying to do is we're taking a different approach, and this faction-based architecture kind of is something I'm really excited about personally. We're trying a lot of things in terms of experimentation. So I would say if you're somebody that likes to see new things tried and new techniques applied, developed, Blur is the way to go.
Nice. Well, I love what you guys are doing by way of just acknowledging that, like, we live in a world where ASICs exist, right? And where new ASICs are being conceived of and fabbed, right? Every 6 months. I mean, if you, like the genie's out of the bottle, there's no stuffing it back in. And that's been the case. It's been the reality of so many coin networks for going on 7 years now, not quite 8 years, but going on about 7 years where it's like, nope, ASICs are here. And
exactly. And I mean, I don't see any advantages that are actually, garnered by competing directly against fabricators. I think we should work with them. And that's the way you're going to maximize efficiency to get out of these devices, right? And really efficiency is the only way to level the playing field, aside from maybe, our divide and conquer strategy that we're going to be trying.
Yeah. And I like that a lot. There's some other projects that are, I think, dipping their toes in that water.
Right.
And yeah, we'll see how it shapes up. I'm excited to see what the response is to what you guys have done. Let's talk really briefly about CryptoNight Dynamic. How does that compare to something like RandomX or ProgPow in terms of randomization, or in terms of the adaptation of the algorithm for the device that is doing proof of work?
So I guess the biggest innovations within that, we basically took the, CryptoNight Adaptive, which was Nerva's algorithm, is what we took and based it on. What they do is they have a variable amount of iterations that happen within the CryptoNight algorithm. So if you're looking at the actual algorithm, anywhere where there's a loop, basically they vary the amount of iterations within that loop. So what we did was we took that and used the first 6 characters of the previous block's hash, the current block's timestamp, and added those into the math so that the actual iterations vary on both interblock and intra-block bases. So because your timestamp is changing all the time, the actual numbers for that calculation also change within the block that you're mining. So anytime you do the calculation, that timestamp gets updated. It gets, bound by what's called a modulus. So it basically keeps it within a bounded envelope using those values, and uses some pretty strong mathematical hardness assumptions to kind of make sure that nobody's cheating. There are ways around it, I would say, setting a static timestamp, that kind of thing. But you'd have to get really creative, I think. And we haven't had anybody that's really been able to say, hey, these are huge holes within that. So I think as far as the near future goes, we kind of accomplished our mission on that. If you want, after the interview, I can get you actually some, a little technical write-up kind of. It's pretty succinct. It's well commented code, so you can see it a lot better exactly what's going on under the hood, when it's out in front of your paper. That's
awesome. I would definitely appreciate that. I know, as mentioned before, big fan of CryptoNote, and I'm a big fan of CryptoNight. The initial, it was, dare I say, inspired, for its time. It got definitely the job done for a while. And so Absolutely. Now iterating on CryptoNight, I just think it's a phenomenal way to go, just adjusting scratchpad values and then doing some other tweaks as Nerva did, and that now you've iterated on to make even better. I just don't know that scrapping the whole thing and starting with something else is warranted.
Exactly. And so with those values that you need to actually derive from the blockchain. So the cool thing about our algorithm is that we take the randomness from the actual previous block's hash. Now, all of those, that's basically our random number generator, right? Is that first 6 characters of the block's hash, and then also a timestamp. What's really cool about that is that we're drawing on the actual blockchain for randomness within the calculations. So, could you mine it with a pool? or GPU? Absolutely. You just need the numbers from the previous block's hash. But if you're actually relaying those values across a network from, two clients, you're going to have a little bit of a latency delay in terms of communicating those values. So it's held up well so far for us.
Nice. Yeah, I'd love to see that write up. Definitely do send it along, and I'll include it in the blog write up that accompanies this media. So that's the direction my publication is taking now. Is that I'm kind of gone to a hub and spoke approach where I'm self-publishing and I'm not dealing with Medium or YouTube. I'm not taking any guff from any of these social media platforms.
It's the way to go, man, with the way things are right now.
Yeah. So I'd love to. I mean, the richer the data, the better this would be.
And
so,
I mean, so the other thing is that if there's anybody watching who wants to actually critique the algorithm and wants to come back and say, hey, I can break this. This is how. We welcome that kind of adversarial development. It's not something that we shy away from. We won't consider you an enemy because you're trying to break things. We want to see how things will break so that we can make them better.
Nice. Well, hey, that's the spirit of mining, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
So the whole point, oh no, selfish miners. It's like, wait a second. What did you think? Mining isn't charity. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, cool. That's great. So, yeah, thank you for issuing that call. I'd love to. We'll double down on that, and the calls to action in the description as well. Any links that you have for like bounties or whatever else, like please send those along, and we'll include them.
Sure.
But as far as collabs and giving back, you mentioned that working with the Komodo platform that's been fruitful so far in terms of lining up delayed proof of work. Any other projects you've collabed with directly and that are noteworthy, and then any giving back that you've been able to do for them? For example, offering any of your work to Monero. Have they accepted anything you've done?
So yeah, I am actually a Monero contributor. They were small things, right? Small changes to the Depends build system, for their cross compilation, that kind of thing. Definitely open to contributing. I reported a few vulnerabilities to Monero. Those didn't come to fruition. But it helped them find some bugs at least. So something good came out of it. I've also worked with Duke from Hush. He recently published a new anonymity buffing protocol called Seach. That helps to, basically obfuscate the transaction graph on ZEC networks, right? And I actually did get a credit and special thanks to that. So shout out to Duke for that.
Nice.
Very, very cool guy doing some really fantastic work within the, I guess they're transitioning to full Z to Z later on this year.
Yeah,
so,
I read that somewhere with Hush, and I haven't, it's funny, they haven't really been on my roster at any point to come up for an interview, but now I feel like I kind of need to chase one down.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's a great guy to talk to too. Very, very intelligent guy. Him and James are up there in terms of the guys that I almost trust, blindly on a couple things. When they say the math is right, basically I know it's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess one more person I'm working with lately is Fire Ice UK as well. He and I are doing some research on Monero privacy and that kind of stuff. So that'll get published eventually here. I'm not sure how soon, but he and I have been going back and forth for about the last 2 weeks talking about it. So
it's awesome, man. Not a bad friend to have when it comes to crypto night mining or crypto note mining.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Okay, so great. It sounds like sounds like you're contributing in meaningful places and you're making meaningful relationships and you're getting credit for it too. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's always great to get noticed. Yeah, for sure.
So, thank you. I think that this is, and I'm sure you've heard in other interviews, this in my mind is one of the hallmarks of a healthy project, is that there is collaboration and that you're collaborating with people who are doing meaningful work on other sides of the industry. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, we're kind of in the, I hesitate to say business, but, in the industry of innovation, right? So, I mean, I think that if you're not doing that, you're not pushing boundaries and doing worthwhile research, what are you doing really, right? I mean, that's the important stuff in my opinion.
Yeah, I know politically you're probably not really allowed to say this, but I say it often, like it's the Charlie Lee problem of crypto. He's a good guy. He's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy. Really nice guy. But he's not doing research. He's not writing code. That does tend to happen once things get to a certain level. And I mean, I think it is important that people who are leaders, kind of back away and let the community take things over. Doing that delicately though is important, I think. And that's the only area I felt as though Charlie Lee could have gone about things better. Granted, he's still, working with the Litecoin Foundation and stuff like that. Right. But I mean,
again, don't want to say too much bad, but he's again, he seems like a good guy. I just thought that could have been handled slightly more delicately. So when someone does step away, I mean, the way Satoshi did it phased out over a long period of time with Bitcoin, right? Where he was stepping back. So I think that's the optimal way to go about that. But yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of things that I think are important by way of foundation and taking vitals on a project. Problems, inflation bugs, botnets, 51% attacks, just anything that was like an actual existential threat or an actual, like a real serious threat. What has come up so far for Blur Network, and how did you solve it?
So we've been attacked during our hard forks pretty often. I mean, that's the most vulnerable time period really for any network. Doesn't have a substantial amount of hash rate. So we ran into some issues with our first few forks. Just kind of adapted them in real time. Our users got on board with making sure the right chain was the one that won out, that kind of stuff. So really, to credit the community there, honestly, I have to, just because they're the ones that keep everything going, right? Our miners that are willing to make sure the right chain is getting mined and stuff like that. Work with developers. I'm a huge, I don't view myself as a developer almost, I view myself almost as a user who cared to learn enough for the rest of us. I still view myself that way in part. And so I think that the dialogue between developers and users has to be civil, productive. And if you have that, I think you have a winning community, really.
Nice. Okay. So it sounds like the answer to all the problems then has been the community.
Yeah. So, I mean, after this hard fork and we have DPoW in place, I think that we won't have to worry about this kind of stuff anymore. I think that any project that's not really working hard on 51% attack protection is going to run into some major issues in the future. So laying that groundwork hopefully will ameliorate that. But, I expect issues to arise when we're innovating. So that's something we'll continue to adapt to and fix as we go.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. You mentioned it also. It's like, well, yeah, within crypto, that attitude of like everyone's a pen tester, right? Every miner is a pen tester. Every user is a pen tester. Everybody's a bug finder, right? Everyone's trying to like find issues and
absolutely.
You can't just say like, well, no, you're only allowed to use blockchain this way.
Exactly.
Here are the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, the people that again take that adversarial approach, it helps us get better. So that's the most important thing. Aside from that, we haven't had any double spending, none of that stuff, no major problems. So, all said and done, been a smooth almost 1 million blocks so far.
Nice. That's great. Let's jump back to the beginning of the project. Genesis block, moving into this project. How were you guys funded?
No funding whatsoever.
No pre-mine, no insta-mine, no.
So we did a pre-mine for the first block. There's 360,000 Blur in the first block. We plan on funding the DPoW wallets, the notary system actually with that. But aside from that, absolutely no funding from outside sources, just what's on the blockchain. That's it.
Awesome. Okay. Let's jump into just really briefly, just a little bit of proof of work stuff, and we'll get to the opinion stuff, which is what's really fun anyway.
Sure.
But, proof of work, what percentage of block reward goes to mining?
100%.
Awesome.
No founder's reward, no portion of blocks that gets distributed to the people in power, none of that stuff. It's completely decentralized in that regard.
Got it. So no dev fee at all?
Nope, none.
Okay. Is there a percentage of block reward that has ever been discussed as going to a different direction, whether it's staking or masternode, some kind of a financial value preservation scheme?
I'm not a huge fan of proof of stake or masternodes. I think that they create more problems than they help. With that being said, Ethereum is doing some cool things in terms of getting people to actually pay for the utility on their chain. Chris Berniski did a good Twitter thread on this. I can send that to you afterward too. But aside from Bitcoin, he said Ethereum has the best model for people willing to pay for its utility. So outside of what Ethereum is doing, I think that it's kind of again, it creates more problems than it actually solves. The only time I would think that we might actually apportion a percentage of block rewards, which would be very small, would be if we actually got a foundation behind the Blur project officially, right? So that we had multiple people on staff we had to pay or something like that once the project grows a little bit more. And if, time will tell if that's necessary or not. But we've got a committee of, I think, 8 people currently, 7 people that are helping me out with administrative stuff. They're all completely volunteer, help out free of charge, so we've got a great team behind us. So not something that's necessary now, but maybe in the future.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. And as far as the launch consensus mechanism, it's been proof of work day one, 100%.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, fair launch. That again, that first block was mined, by me. So that's, tucked away in a wallet. But aside from that, it was, code was public on GitHub the day it was launched. So.
Okay. Awesome. CPU, GPU, FPGA, ASIC. We talked about this a little bit. Arms race, cat and mouse game.
Sure.
So many ways to characterize it, right? But as far as your opinion, just the industry at large, and Blur, you mentioned in the future, you're looking at attempting to silo the different camps of hardware enthusiasts and then professional miners that maybe have, warehouses full of ASICs. You're looking to try to separate them into different camps and then give them all incentive to participate.
Right.
But the industry at large, where do you think that hardware is going for proof of work? What do you think is a reasonable decentralization of hash rate for any project?
So we don't actually support pools on our network. All of our miners actually run their own node, at least one. I'm sure there are pools that are set up somewhere that I don't know about, but on the large part, I've only seen one publicly that sent out a couple templates and then stopped working. So I'm not sure if that was due to our timestamp stuff or what, but we don't support pools officially until our users actually start to want them. Right now, our hash rate's low enough where people can all run their own nodes, get block rewards within 24 hours, and see rewards pretty steadily. So when the time comes that there is too much hash rate on the network and people aren't seeing the rewards as much, I have no problem supporting pools. As far as GPUs go, we had a guy that developed adversarially a GPU miner. People on our network currently use that. That's where we got the hash rate thing, where I said 2080 Super is performing, less than some AMD processors. So, I think that if people want to come in and actually write this stuff, no problem with it. We won't fork away from the hardware or software adaptations. I think that a lot more can be achieved through collaboration. So, if someone were to come to me and say, hey, I'll write the support for the GPU miner and pools, I'll tailor an algorithm on that chain to benefit them the most. No problem.
Got it.
So long as everything's done publicly,
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And the GPU miner, that's where I think I started to see some interesting back and forth within the Blur community. And I think Nerva also, and then some other related projects. I don't want to stir up controversy because there was enough, right? I saw enough drama, right? I just kind of like it. And then it crept into my personal space when somebody, I think, started tagging me and they were like, Seth Estrada will tell you. Like, tell you what? Why? Like, why?
Yeah, we get a lot of beef from a lot of places. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get it. Like, they dragged me in like it was some kind of like street fight. And they're like, wait, we need another heavy hitter. Throw some haymakers here. And I'm like, dude, what? What are we even talking about? And and then it became apparent that somebody had written this GPU miner. Did it even have multi GPU support?
To be honest with you, I have not used it. I don't use software from people that I don't trust, or not officially supported. We have a few guys on our network that are mining with it. Basically, all you need is that XM rig fork set up on a GPU, and then just a node running somewhere that it can communicate with. So you don't connect to a pool, just connect to your own daemon, and you can hash away. So I mean, I've heard good things from other people about it. One of the things that I would really like to do is to get FireIce UK to help us out with a miner potentially, because that would make it so that I could trust the software, I feel, and then we could actually get some some verifiable numbers from somebody who's not so much an adversary, because where that GPU miner came from, as you said, was from some of that kind of beef that we had going on, right?
Yeah, that was weird. It was weird. Again, I'm not going to name names. It was crazy how it spilled into my personal space when one day on Discord, like my mentions are blown up, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, so I mean, those guys really wanted me to fork the chain, to fork away from the GPU stuff, but I've said a million times publicly, we will not do that if people adapt hardware or software. So maybe they didn't get the response they were looking for. I'm not quite sure.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That's definitely good to know. It sounds like then, based on that whole progression of CPU to GPU, FPGA, ASIC, sounds like if you got the news that a custom bitstream was written that just like kicked butt at Kryptonite Dynamic, that you'd welcome it, or just say like whatever.
Well, what we do is we'd fork off another chain, like I said, this multi-chain ecosystem idea, and actually say, hey, you're mining with an FPGA on this network. What if we were to make block incentives higher on the other one? You can go mine over there. We'll tailor the algorithm to exactly what you want, and you'll have your own space to do that. where you don't have to compete with CPUs, and you'll have a higher amount of block rewards actually.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, hey, the incentive's there. It's hard to ignore. The incentive. That makes sense. Cool. So as far as something would cause you to fork, it sounds like you're talking about like growing the ecosystem in response, not so much like creating any kind of like not so much hitting the switch tracks, right, and doing a full hard fork into something new as a response. What would cause you to hard fork?
Upgrades, really, I would say, like network upgrades. I mean, we're forking to a new difficulty adjustment algorithm. With the upcoming hard fork, we'll be forking in delayed proof of work. Basically stuff that if our users came to me and said, hey, this is impacting us negatively, we need to fork. If it was an overwhelming amount of people, absolutely we would, right? So basically what the community wants and what the tech necessitates, that's what catalyzes hard forks for us.
Got it. Okay. But it sounds like proof of work threats then it sounds like you're trying to eliminate any excuse for proof of work threats being that cause then.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we won't fork away from hardware or software adaptation. It's just not a good idea. I don't think it benefits anybody, and it just limits access to mining hardware even further, right? I mean, you've got people on the inside, they're potentially mining at much higher rates than other people just because they knew the code that was coming out first, right? I mean, you have, even with Monero, the 6-month burn-in that happens right before their algorithms get forked in and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people disagree with it. It's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you make a really good point there, especially with the higher liquidity coins such as Monero. Like, dude, who knows? Who knows what's going on there?
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I would not have forked Monero if I did not like their technology. Right? They're doing awesome work. In particular, the guys at Monero Research Labs, breakthrough stuff. Stuff that nobody else is doing in crypto, and that I definitely respect. So, all of our work is derivative of that prior work. So, to say that they're doing some things wrong doesn't mean I dislike them as a project by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, hey, it's just it's a matter of fact. If you ask them, why isn't your code exactly the same way it was 3 years ago? Because they were doing something wrong. They needed to make nobody's arrived yet. The work isn't done. It's gonna. Yeah. You have to keep it
exactly. So,
question about sort of like buyer persona, if you will, or community member. Who do you really want mining for you? What is that ideal customer avatar?
Sorry. Could you rephrase the question? I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. So when it comes to any kind of, like right now, your main customer is the miner, right? Like people aren't using Blur today for e-commerce or for a brick and mortar store as a currency or as any other type of blockchain product, as I understand.
Right. Yeah, so that's true.
Your main customer today is miners.
Yeah, so I mean, we're focused on kind of keeping a community rather than I don't feel as though we necessarily should be a consumer-facing product. We can rely on consumers to be our miners and to provide us security in a way that we can't do in a centralized fashion, right? Once DPoW moves through, and we can be sure there's gonna be no chain rollbacks, that kind of thing. I think that makes a much stronger case for actually establishing us in an e-commerce fashion, right? Where you can actually send Blur to people and be confident that it's going to stay the way it is and you're not going to get, rolled back or whatever, all these concerns that you have with smaller blockchain projects. So yeah, we've kind of been focusing on, again, I think really the biggest opportunity for us in terms of growing the ecosystem and bringing on people that can garner the utility of the Blur network organically is going to stem a little bit off of I'd like to move the root of Ethereum, actually, because I think that Ethereum has a great way. They've managed to delegate liability to people that are, launching ERC20 tokens, and at the same time also delegate that utility in a way that's completely hands off, right? So I think in the future, the way that we're probably going to go is, more towards almost a Komodo kind of ecosystem where you have these. I think privacy tokens are going to be a very big thing in the future. So that's the utility capture model, I guess, that we're looking at currently as we kind of move forward in our innovation and stuff.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you bring that up. I've got to ask, are you taking inspiration from Tari at all?
I have not looked at Tari enough to actually say one way or the other. I'm sure that some of the ideas are the same. I've read their website and stuff. Somewhat similar, particularly with atomic swaps, that kind of stuff. Maybe not merge mining as much, right? Because we'll have actual separate algorithms running on these networks, but kind of a platform. Yeah, definitely. At least in that regard, similar. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to maybe we circle back in a couple months or a little while after we both get a chance to look closer at Tari. I haven't done my full due diligence on it either. It's just been one of those things where like the Monero Research Labs is talking about it. They built out this massive site with some documentation, but not many other people are talking about it publicly.
Yeah,
so it hasn't.
So I mean, they just launched their testnet, I think, not too long ago. So there's movement there for sure. But yeah, I'll be keeping my eye on it. Definitely. You know, I again, Fluffy Pony started Monero, so or not started Monero, but you know, was the head guy at Monero for a very long time. So obviously, I'm going to follow his work and see what comes out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's talk about privacy. I've got some canonical questions that just have to do with apples to apples comparison. So bear with me. We'll go through this really fast and we'll get again to the fun stuff. What percentage of transactions on your network are currently private?
100%. There are no transparent transactions unless you send a view key to somebody.
Okay, awesome. So this is the default operating mode, 0 opt-in required on the user's part.
Correct. Yeah, opt out only in a way. Yeah.
Got it. Is there
you would opt out? So yeah, you could, if you need somebody to audit a transaction or whatever, basically you just go on Blur's website. Down at the very bottom is a transaction viewer. Plug in the transaction hash. If you scroll down a little bit further, there's a little box. It'll ask you for the recipient's Blur address and a view key. And you supply both of those, and it makes the transaction transparent to onlookers. So BISC's arbitration system, if you download BISC, they actually have a big window that I actually put in there. So it's a pop-up when you actually go to send Blur that walks you through the entire arbitration process, should it need to be done.
Got it. Okay. So I mean, so it's transparency a la CryptoNote with the view key.
Selective transparency, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. As far as it being peer-reviewed, are you aware of peer review on the privacy model that Blur uses, or the privacy tech Blur uses? I
mean, aside from the standard view keys, not too familiar with the peer review as it pertains to our network anyway.
Okay. As far as the privacy of the Blur network and the CryptoNote privacy that it inherits from Monero, does it require trusted setup?
No, not trusted setup whatsoever. I mean, we use what's called Peterson commitments to 0. So basically, it's just a secret sharing protocol, right? So there's that's the one thing that Monero definitely has going for it over Zcash, which is no trusted setup at the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah. So to jump back a little bit, like we talked about comparing some other privacy projects. That for me it's huge, right? It's huge. We live in a world where we know that there are government agencies from around the world who have an interest in pursuing, finding, and exploiting backdoors.
Absolutely.
So anywhere there's a trusted setup, there's the very real possibility there's a 3-letter organization that owns that network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the other thing that is really going to come to surface is active attacks against the network, right? You have this passive monitoring that happens, but with the ping and reject attacks that were published by Bonet et al., Florian Tramer was on there too as one of the authors. He submitted vulnerabilities to Monero and Zcash. Both the Monero ones were not so bad, but I think we're going to see a rise in that type of attack where you have an active observer sort of sending things to a wallet to see how it responds. That difference in the way that those wallets actually respond to an external stimulus can de-anonymize you very heavily. So I think we're going to see a huge uptick in that kind of attack in the future.
Yeah. I totally agree. Chain analysis is something that various additional institutions are interested in, not even government, right? Financial.
Definitely.
So, and they don't necessarily have to play by the same rules.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, so one of the things that with the work that Duke was doing on Seach, the anonymization protocol on Hush, something he alludes to is, basically companies tying OSINT data, which is open source intelligence. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. It's basically publicly available data. So there's programs such as Maltego, for example, Maltego. They mine actively OSINT data from GitHub, Twitter, Gmail, anywhere that has publicly available data, and will actually try to tie together networks of people and addresses. If there is a private tool that ties crypto addresses to those as well, the amount of metadata that could be analyzed and mined to de-anonymize people is huge, right? I mean, as far as I know, his paper was the first publicly published analysis and kind of formulation of this kind of attack. It's called the metadata metaverse attack, I believe. And basically, it's just tying crypto information to that OSINT data and using it to de-anonymize people.
Jeez. Yeah, it's terrifying. It's truly terrifying, the amount, like the number of levers that we've all left out across the internet to be used against us.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk to finish up the conversation about the privacy on Blur Network. Anonymity set size. Are you aware of a number for an anonymity set size?
So we only have a ring size of 5 currently. We've prioritized, blockchain size, minimizing that over privacy, just because when you don't have a lot of transactions that are happening, it's very hard to hide in a small crowd, right? So actually putting a whole bunch of transactions together in a ring signature, a bunch of decoy outputs would not do that much, because we do not have the transaction throughput currently, at least the transaction activity needed to actually hide in the crowd, right? So that's something we'll be looking to expand later. And it's actually the focus of the work that Fire Ice and I are doing currently in terms of research, is to see how ring signatures and decoy output selection algorithms can actually best be utilized to maximize your chance that statistically you're not sticking out like a sore thumb.
Got it. Okay. So for today, then, the ring size is 5. And
correct.
In the future, do you already have a roadmap, or do you already have a plan for expanding the ring size? Sounds like the work with Fire Ice is going to be, it's related not only to ring size, but also, like you mentioned before, to determining other factors.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So the 2 factors that matter the most probably are both ring size and then the actual, total number of outputs you're selecting from, right? By law of averages, if you have 20 million outputs, the odds that yours showed up by accident is very small, right? They called this the knack attack in the Breaking Monero series. That's kind of the body of the work. So, I mean, really the results of that work will determine where we move in the future in terms of privacy and what's possible.
Okay, got it. So, and as of today, you're not committing to a timeline then.
Exactly.
That's probably smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chainalysis has anybody bothered to go out of their way or tell you, like, oh yeah, we've been able to de-anonymize your chain?
No, but I mean, it's something that, again, if someone were to take an adversarial standpoint like that, we'd actually invite them to do it, and to do it in the open. We have the support of our community on that. I know for a while, me and Duke were talking about potentially setting up, basically a separate network that had GPUs mining, trying to de-anonymize both Hush and Blur. That was something I didn't have enough time to do, but if somebody else would like to do it or something like that, it's something we'd welcome, so long as it happened in the open. As far as somebody contacting me, no, that has not happened.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Actually got a big old stable of questions that relate to privacy, because it's an apples to apples comparison. And I talked to AeroChain, and I talked to Pirate Chain, and I talked to several other crypto notes, and we'll continue to talk to additional crypto notes and other projects right now. But the data cost, or the size for private transaction, what is the size of a transaction in data?
So, I mean, basically, you have this barrier on our network that I believe the median size is like, hold on, I'll pull it up in the Explorer really quickly here. Basically, that size grows linearly with the amount of data, the amount of basically ring members that you have, right? So the larger the ring signature you're generating, basically, your data is going to grow linearly with that size. So that's a major problem that plagues CryptoNode in particular, and is the reason we have opted to minimize the chain size as opposed to generating larger ring signatures. Because you have this problem with feasibility that happens, where if you have a massive amount of outputs in a ring signature, that data becomes really unfeasible to actually put on the blockchain, right? So you have this kind of trade-off that's happening between, hey, how many decoys do we select from? How big do the ring signatures need to be? And how does that impact the anonymity set that you're talking about? Is it good enough, right? And overwhelmingly, we're finding that the answer is no, unfortunately. That you hit that feasibility boundary a lot before you are willing to actually, or able to get a statistical probability that, that you have privacy.
Got it. Okay. So today then on Blur, do you know how much data it costs to push through a single transaction?
I can pull one up right now. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see here.
And then the follow up to that question would be the proof time verification. Just how long does it take in total to settle a transaction?
It's our blocks are only a minute long, so basically transactions go through almost instantly on our network. Verification time for a single block with transactions in it can be as high as 5 seconds, so that's substantial. Most of our transactions use bulletproofs, so that minimizes the transaction size pretty well. But yeah, I'm not finding a transaction here right now. Sorry, I don't have a sample one to pull up.
Yeah,
so I'm not just going to rattle a number off the top of my head without knowing. But
yeah, I appreciate that. Those are the only two appropriate answers when you don't have an answer, right? Either I don't know or I'll tell you soon.
Exactly.
Appreciate that. Let's just and maybe we can come back to it if you can pull up something. But to get through sort of like the canonical questions here, are the origin and destination wallet address known on the blockchain?
No, they are not.
Barring, say, like a view key.
Yeah. Barring a view key, you'd have no idea. Essentially, it uses the same tech that Monero does. So at no point is your address ever posted to the blockchain.
Okay. Awesome. Are there any other privacy functions aside from transactions that are supported today on the Blur network, such as messaging?
No, not currently, but it is something we are looking into, particularly with Hush's work on that stuff. I talk with Duke quite a bit. So, yeah, definitely something we're looking into. Something we did to actually make Deep How possible was we expanded the transaction extra section of Monero transaction or Blur transaction and actually added a separate tag within that transaction extra for embedding the Bitcoin chain data directly on our chain so that we don't have to call across chains to find it, right? That gets hashed using, Bitcoin's algorithm, and actually you can cross-reference it on the Bitcoin network. You can expand that transaction extra functionality to do almost anything, whether that be messaging, any amount of data you need to post there and have it be in a central location on the blockchain, you can do. So that would be the way we'd go about it if we were to go that route, for sure.
Awesome. Okay. And then kind of like moving away from, I guess, related to privacy, do you have any additional privacy support that is a function of a specific kind of wallet?
Not per se, no.
Okay.
No.
Got it.
I did find a transaction here, though, for you. It is, so this is a standard transaction on our network using bulletproofs. It is 2.457 kilobytes.
Oh, cool.
So relatively small when you're using the new bulletproof technology.
Yeah, no, you could definitely do worse.
Yeah, for
plenty
sure.
of blockchains to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like then there are no additional like privacy oriented wallets that will that'll obfuscate the transactions or do any kind of like additional mixing or additional output. Additional manipulation of outputs.
Yeah, no, everything is baked in deeply on the protocol level. We haven't modified any of that stuff from Monero's implementation since they added bulletproofs. So yeah, pretty much everything is standard. Yeah.
Okay, got it. As far as there being mobile wallet support, do you have a mobile wallet today?
We do not today. No, something that is down the pipeline. Absolutely. Don't have a timeline for it though.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have a web wallet?
No, not yet.
Okay, fair enough.
That is something I would like to do. I want to do it in a progressive web app kind of fashion. Like Elastos has a great web wallet that's very simple, page by page, brings you through it, creates it, all that stuff. So, I'm not particularly fond of the way my Monero went about, requiring view key disclosure. And that's going to become a problem with any web wallet where you have a hosted service actually taking care of this stuff for you, right? So,
yeah, kind
of beleaguers the decentralized nature of the network and the it can introduce liability if people aren't going about it smart. So
yeah, totally agreed. As far as there being like a mobile Monero solution, it seems like Cake Wallet is much better.
Yeah, that's the one we're looking at porting for our actual mobile wallet when that comes down the pipeline.
Nice. Any future privacy plans like related to other like beyond what we've already talked about?
Not at present. No. One thing we would like to do that it's not really down the realm of privacy, but in terms of encouraging decentralization is to have a miner decentralization subsidy where pools can be rewarded differently than single miners. Doing that in a way that's private would be interesting. Not sure that it's possible, but something we're looking into, definitely.
Seems like a worthy pursuit for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Pools have been one of the greatest ills of blockchain. I mean, even since before ASICs were hitting networks really hard.
Yeah. I mean, they impact privacy from an OPSEC standpoint, right? I mean, they're a centralized point that has a bunch of people's addresses, that kind of stuff. Potentially IPs connecting to it too. I mean, it's a nightmare from a point of decentralization and just security in general.
Yeah. Okay, let's move away from the conversation about that. Let's get into some opinions. This is all about Biz. What are Biz's opinions related to privacy? The first question that I have is favorite private currencies. And let me issue the caveat that I'm not talking about cryptocurrencies per se. I'm talking about any means of transacting value that is fundamentally private. So even just exchanging a secret between you and somebody else that happens to have high value.
I mean, encryption is the only way to go, right? I mean, and they need to be sound actual primitives that have been tested over time. They can't be things like, somebody rolled their own crypto, that kind of thing. I mean, that'll work, but it's obfuscation. It's not actually proven technology. So, I mean, I think that, for example, the anti-encryption bill that's going through, absolute nightmare. Do I think it will pass? No, because the people that are trying to pass it also need encryption to communicate. It's just a bad idea to have if the government can find a backdoor in something, in all likelihood, a well-funded attacker can do the same, right? So you want, I mean, I really think that the people that stand to gain the most from actual private communication might be individuals of prominence, policymakers, lawmakers, judges, police forces, that kind of stuff. So I think that the goals within crypto actually align a lot more cleanly with the people that may not understand exactly how much it could benefit them within, policymakers, law enforcement, that kind of thing. I think that really the ideals of crypto are actually aligned very well with theirs.
Got it. Okay. So let me ask then more specifically, private currencies. So it could be.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. By the way, I totally agree that the anti-encryption bill is a cluster, and we need to do anything we can if we have any kind of access to any kind of influence at all.
Right.
Anything we can to influence it not going through. There's a lot that's wrong-headed about it. Though on that note, did you know that the FCC already has outlawed encryption on radios?
Really?
If you go and try to get a walkie-talkie, you can't get one that actually has proper encryption on it. You can get some that has like quasi encryption on it, but it's already backdoored.
Yeah, interesting. That's pretty wild.
So if you did run a radio and you did roll your own encryption technology or inline encryption function before it broadcasts,
right,
you're violating federal law.
That's wild. Did not know that.
So pretty frustrating there. But that's just because the FCC, they're trying to clear the airwaves so that they don't, you don't have a bunch of like crazy randomness flying through the air.
Yeah. Back to your question, as far as currencies go, I think cash is the only truly private medium. I mean, something you can hand somebody in person. You can emulate something like that with a decentralized network, but you would have to have something that redacts that information afterward in order for that to be truly effective. So I think only in person, off the internet, is where privacy is actually able to be had. Okay,
awesome. I tend to agree with you also. And it sounds like, based on the other opinions that you shared, if it's going to be cash, it's going to be the US dollar. It'll
absolutely
open more doors for you than other currencies.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And normally my follow-up question to people who tell me what their favorite private currency is, have you used it? But I'm just taking for granted, maybe you've used cash once or twice before?
Only twice, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, when you figure out how to do it, write the book, Mastering Cash.
I need documentation, man. I need documentation.
Right. Yeah. Look at an Amazon bestseller, Mastering Cash, 50 pages and just blank. No user manual needed. Awesome. So let me also give you the caveat. Are there any other private currencies that you're a fan of? Sounds like cash is king for you. What would be a close second?
I Blur probably. That's about as I have the most confidence in that one, to be honest with you. Aside, Bitcoin too, but that's not really private, right? I mean, in terms of it not being tied to your name and stuff, there's it's pseudonymous, not anonymous, right? So Yeah, I would say crypto is the second one probably.
Okay, got it. And as far as privacy wallets, have you ever used any of these privacy wallets
I have not actually.
Bitcoin or for any others?
I have not actually.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I've strayed away from CoinJoin, that kind of stuff. Samurai Wallet looks interesting. There's a couple in the Monero ecosystem too. Exodus Wallet, all right. But yeah, aside from just looking at them, no, I've always used Electrum.
Got it. Yeah, it's lightweight. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Favorite privacy tech that maybe isn't crypto related, maybe it is. You mentioned before encryption is a big deal. Things like a VPN or Tor, or maybe an encryption client that you prefer.
I mean, VPNs, I'm always buying a VPN for the most part anyway. I think Tor is great. I think the fact that Brave browser has managed to integrate Tor so that you can hit a button to Torify things, absolutely very cool. It has some problems, obviously. I wouldn't trust it with extremely, sensitive stuff. IRC also has some really cool stuff with OTR messaging. That's kind of the staple for whistleblowers, that kind of thing, right? So, yeah, I mean, I've also heard, basically anything that has really a warrant canary, I can respect, because, if people can at least in a roundabout way be informed that something has happened, I value truth over in a service provider. I value truth over, anything else, really.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome. You mentioned with Brave browser their implementation of Tor that it's not quite right. I'd love to, if we can, just like let's hammer that nail completely. What are your misgivings? Have you ever tried to, for example, visit a .onion address using the Tor version of Brave?
I have not on Brave, actually. However, one of the things that bothers me most, honestly, is that the Brave browser is built in the Chromium engine, right? Kind of instant red flag there. It means that no matter what you do, it's not going to be so private as hard as you might want it to be. There's a reason that Tor chose Firefox, because it gave them fine-grained control over what information is being leaked. You can't even disable WebRTC on the Chromium engine, right?
Yeah. So
big issue there without an add-on anyway, which of course, that's another risk. But yeah, so basically just unfortunately the architecture it's built on top of is my only misgiving about it.
Got it. Well, while we're on the topic, would you recommend that people, if they're interested in using Tor as a technology, that they just download the Tor browser directly from the Tor project?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
What better place to get it?
Yeah,
right? I mean,
well, why didn't they roll it into Chromium? Well, I think you the reasons.
They've got Bruce Schneier working their team tune out Tor, which, I mean, he wrote the Schneier on Securities books. He's, one of the head guys as far as, actual computers and security go. So, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with a team like that, right?
Nice. Okay, and you mentioned also VPN. You're always using VPN. You're always paying for a VPN.
Yeah, don't use free services. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Is there one that you favor?
There's a couple. I would refer you to, just to keep my OPSEC in order. I'd refer you to privacytools.io. They have a list of great VPNs on there that are, pay VPNs. I think with free VPNs, you wind up getting what you pay for, right? So, I mean, you don't know what's happening to your data. Better off to just pay somebody and have them take good care of you than rely on terms and conditions and them not screwing you over, right?
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, let's kind of wrap up the interview a little bit. Let me ask you the one and only closed-ended question. I've actually asked you a couple. Sorry.
No, it's cool.
But let me ask you one closed-ended question. Pretty sure I know the answer. Does privacy matter?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Characterize for us, like paint a picture in our minds. What would a complete lack of privacy in the world look like?
I think honestly, almost today. I think that until we start viewing privacy through the lens of data ownership and the fact that your data is yours and yours alone, and once we get some decentralized social networks working and stuff, I don't think that we're in a reality where we can expect reasonably to have any privacy. You have this kind of precedent within law that's a reasonable expectation of privacy, but even that's cloudy and murky, right? So I think that in order to have true privacy, I think at this point you'd have to stay off the internet. That's the reality of the situation. So I think decentralized networks are a big step forward in that direction. Again, like I said, privacy through the lens of data ownership is the only way we'll ever get there.
Okay. Awesome. Let's flip that around and let's create a vision in the minds of listeners and viewers now, according to your worldview. What is your vision of correctly implemented privacy? If we reach for, as humanity, the gold ring of privacy and we get it, what does that look like?
I think it's, again, decentralized networks and making sure that, from the moment that all these networks need to have, basically, say you log onto a decentralized Facebook, that would then set up a node where all of your data would be self-contained within that node. You take down your node, that data ceases to exist. You have to be the only one with control over it. Sure, people can look at it from the outside in, log things about you, but the reality of it is that with things like Facebook, you can't actually delete all of your data because it's not yours to own. They own it. So I think really the only way is through these decentralized architectures. Mesh networks are promising too in that regard, right? But what we have to do is we have to put the user back at the center of their own data. Otherwise, it's always going to be there if you don't actually have the ability to redact it yourself. So I think the research in redactable blockchains is very promising. There was some research that came out, I believe also, it was posted on the ePrint cryptology archives, and it was research into a redactable blockchain information. So if you want to post them into a blockchain and then later on redact it, there's a way to do that securely, at least with primitives currently, mathematically speaking. So I think all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And that's great. I appreciate you laying out some of your privacy opinions. It sounds like obviously you're a fan of American exceptionalism in the sense that it's not perfect, but the United States is doing a lot of stuff right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like you're a big fan of the U.S. dollar and cash. It sounds like you have some hope that the U.S. dollar can maybe recover at some point.
Well, I don't see a truly private alternative, in terms of internet stuff. I mean, it's absolutely a great direction to run in, but currently I don't see a way for it to be completely private. I mean, even within these things like commitment schemes, you have, this mathematical problem where we know that you can't have both a perfectly private and perfectly binding commitment scheme. The math is not there yet. So in Monero, in ZK Snarks, all of it, one of those two is the trade-off given. So you're either lacking privacy or you're lacking a binding commitment, which could result in people faking amounts in a commitment scheme and stuff, right? Imbalance between the actual math. So I think we are approaching a point where provable mathematical privacy will be possible, but until we actually bridge that gap between where we're at now and where we need to be then mathematically, I don't see it as possible currently. It's great to have people working in that direction. It's what needs to happen for the steps to get us there eventually. But until we have that, I think the only way to actually transact privacy would be to meet somebody in person.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time, man. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think we covered a lot, actually. So yeah, again, happy with your skills as an interviewer, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you making the time. Where can people find the project? What's the best way to get involved?
Best way to get involved is probably through GitHub. All of our development is public on there. We don't do any private development whatsoever. So just jump into our Discord or our Telegram, drop us a line, say you'd like to help out, submit a PR on GitHub. If you're just getting familiar with the project, go on our website, blur.cash, read about it. And then, I don't know, maybe lurk inside our chats for a little while, get a feel for the community and see if you fit in. We have a very welcoming community, welcome people of all walks of life, whatever that may be. So, just drop in if you're interested and see if you like what you see.
Awesome. Last couple questions. Did I ask for or receive a bounty in exchange for arranging or conducting this interview?
No, not at all.
Okay. I like being really open and straightforward about that.
Absolutely.
I like to signal to the rest of the open source community at large, the free and open source community at large, especially if they're working on privacy-oriented projects, that they have a home and a free microphone here. So
awesome.
Thank you for coming to take advantage of that.
Of course.
Last question. This is the most important one. Can I borrow 50,000 ETH in exchange for my new token, Kex?
No.
Okay, I thought you were cool, man.